Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Green with Scott Ott and Bill Whittle. And what is the right angle on Memorial Day? What is the right way to commemorate, to celebrate, if that's the right word, what is probably the most solemn public holiday in our nation? And this came to mind because, our very own Bill Whittle ran into a situation on Friday with an email he sent out. So we're going to start this one off a little differently with an interview on Bill. Tell us what happened with your mass email over the weekend.
We'd not done a newsletter in quite a long time. We'd been scrambling to get Right Angle up. It had been 4, 5, 6 weeks or something. And so I wanted to do a Memorial Day message and get some news out about what had happened, but I also like to talk about Memorial Day and so on. And I was just rapidly firing off this thing, and in the header of the email I put in Happy Memorial Day, and then I went on to explain the right angle and all the stuff that had happened, and then I wrote a couple of paragraphs about how, all of this, not just the holiday, not just BillWhittle.com, the entire country is the result of the people that didn't come home, and it's the result of the men and women that have made the ultimate sacrifice so that we can have a holiday like this. And a number of people pointed out to me that Happy Memorial Day is not the salutation you want to use on an email like that. And that mortified me. And then when I heard that actually the Gold Star families, the ones that have actually lost loved ones in the service, are particularly hurt by that term Happy Memorial Day, then I actually started to feel a little sick. So I immediately wrote once I'd heard about it, I wrote a reply to that and just said I'd like to apologize for this. I just didn't know. I had heard many years ago, 5, 6 years ago, I was at an event for Congressional Medal of Honor recipients, and I used to say winners. The guy won the Congressional Medal of Honor. And they said, no, he didn't win anything. It's not a contest, first of all. And secondly, most of these people give their lives. He's a recipient, or he was awarded. And it's just sloppiness. It's just language sloppiness, but mostly it's just a mental laziness where you don't really think about it. He won the Congressional Medal of Honor. It's like, he got it. No, he was awarded it. And so once I understood that, I basically sent out another email kind of apologizing and explaining it. But I also included something at the end of that email, and I hope I'm not stealing all of Scott's thunder here, because we talked about it in our conference call. Certainly this was the intent of my first couple paragraphs in that original email. We can say Happy Memorial Day because of the success of the people that have died for this country in the military. It is a happy day here. It's a holiday. The great tragedy of America is how easy it is for us to forget these sacrifices and how easy it is for us to take them for granted. That's the actual tragedy of America. It might in fact be the fatal tragedy of America, but the great success of the military is in fact the fact that our population now is so free and so prosperous and has been for so long that a day honoring our war dead is turned into a day to sell mattresses down at Mattress King. I mean, there is a kind of a beauty about it. Not to take away anything in terms of the lack of respect. I don't think anybody stands in front of me in terms of respect for the military and the history and the traditions of this country. But you can at least make the case that a country has been so well defended by the sacrifice of these men and women for so long that this freedom and prosperity is so taken for granted that it's trivialized. It's a curse and it's an astonishing validation at the same time.
All right, and I don't think anybody watching this, I hope nobody watching this, would confuse this kind of being careful about your word choice in describing Memorial Day than to mix that up with politically correct speech codes or anything like that. I don't think there's any connection.
No, in fact, it's just the exact opposite. I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't write the apology letter because peers pressured me into it. I didn't write it in there because I was worried about business. I wrote the apology letter because I was mortified. I was internally mortified that I'd made a mistake that had hurt people's feelings, and specifically the people that I feel most bound to in terms of the work that I do and that we all do. That wasn't put on me by government or censors or peer pressure. It was a result of feeling like I'd somehow dishonored myself and trying to recover that as quickly as I possibly could.
Well, good on you for that. Because, I tell my sons every day, everybody makes mistakes. The important thing is to catch them and fix them and move on. Scott, this brings together sort of a wider point on the proper way to mark, I don't want to say celebrate, Memorial Day. Online, Google got taken for task for not putting up one of their big Google Doodles that takes over their whole search page. Instead, they had just a small tasteful kind of lapel pin American flag with a yellow ribbon, just a small marker. On the other side, Bing, which always has a huge photo up on their search engine page, had the Marine saluting. The photo's taken from the back. Him saluting the wreath he just laid at the Tomb of the Unknowns in Washington, D.C., which is a remarkable place. I've actually been privileged enough to lay a wreath there when I was in high school, and it stuck with me all these years. I'll never forget it. So, Scott, between those two extremes, is it supposed to be small, solemn, and tasteful, or can it be big and brash like Bing?
Listen, you can play John Philip Sousa's Stars and Stripes Forever as you march down the main street past the courthouse, and I will have tears in my eyes.
All right.
Or you can play Taps from a distant hill where I can't even see the bugler, and I will again have tears in my eyes.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, in a sense, I think our brothers and sisters who have given their lives did so in part in order to defend the pursuit of happiness. And there's a still small voice that comes from the graves of many of which are still overseas, many of which we've never found, that says, hey, listen, brother, why don't you go out in the backyard and put on a pair of really funky plaid shorts and grab a Bud Light and look like an idiot playing badminton? Because we want you to pursue happiness. If I had come home, that's what I would be doing. And, you know, in a sense, that's what America does on a holiday like this, on a somber, joyful occasion where we are only able to celebrate because of the success of those who died in our place. And so yesterday afternoon, the day before we're shooting this, we had friends over, and my wife barbecued some awesome ribs, and we had a good time. And then later on, after the friends went home, we went over to a tiny little cemetery that's actually now in the middle of a big apartment complex. It was once a family plot around a log cabin that was eventually donated to a church that ceased to exist in the 1930s. It's called Bacchus Cemetery. It's in, I believe, properly in Plano, Texas. And we went over there, and I just walked around the cemetery. I took a few pictures to remember the places where what struck me was, in this little out-of-the-way cemetery where there was no pageantry, there were flags. Somebody had showed up. Somebody came and marked the graves. And in one particular case, there was a flag on a grave that was completely enshrouded by a bush. I actually took out my Leatherman tool and cut off a branch so that this World War I veteran's grave could be visible. And people had taken the time to put those flags up. Most of the veterans in that cemetery were not people who had died at wartime, but it was great to see that we remember. We remember these people who sacrificed. We remember those who have gone on before us. I can't be in Pennsylvania right now and go to Fort Indiantown Gap, where the man who brought me up and my brothers, Staff Sergeant Jim McMaster, he and Jessica McMaster lay there in that national cemetery. But it was great to be able to go out to this small cemetery and have a private moment and pray for this country and thank God for these people.
Indeed. Yeah.
And Steve, I just want to say, I got into this trade. The first thing I ever did in this kind of commentary thing was write about my little walk through a small little cemetery called Arlington. I mean, I'd spent an hour out there looking at the fact that all of these gravestones are exactly identical, that you could look down and see Major General, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Gulf, Desert Storm, and next to him is a sergeant who was maybe in the military for 4 months. And there's absolutely no distinction between the two. That impressed me so much when my father was interred there, his ashes were interred there. And the fact that a man who signed on the dotted line 50, 60 years before was a second lieutenant in for 16, 17 months, got to Germany within a week of the war ending, prepared to go to Japan, that they would turn out 40 men in the honor guard, 40 men in the army band, a caisson, the horses, a 21-gun salute, after the businesses that he'd made successful just completely wrote him off. That fundamental recognition of the nobility of America is what got me started doing this.
Well, there's a Jewish tradition after you lose a loved one. It's a year of mourning, a year of grieving, after which point you're supposed to move on. And I lost one of my dearest friends last year to cancer. And the year ended just 3 or 4 weeks ago, I guess. And we did the unveiling of the headstone. There must have been 40 or 50 of us, and that was one of the toughest things I've ever done. And Ed, her husband, asked me to read the 23rd Psalm. And, you can imagine what that scene was like. But after that, We drove down the street a couple of blocks to the park, where Ed had set up a picnic. We had beer, we had bagels and lox and every kind of munchie you can imagine. And for the rest of the day, it was adults drinking beers and throwing frisbees and kids climbing on the playground and all the fun and joy you could possibly imagine. And that's what Memorial Day should be. One day every year where we stop, we remember, and then get on with the serious business of living, because that's what they died for. Thanks for watching Right Angle. This is made possible by the paying members of BillWhittle.com. If you want to see more content like this, go to BillWhittle.com, become a member yourself. We couldn't thank you enough.